Hi, my name is Jeff, and I'm with Veterinary Software, and we're going to run through clinic workflow using an estimate today. I'm going to start this training by creating an appointment, and I'm going to do that by clicking on the schedule at the time that I want to create my appointment. When I do that, the appointment dialog option pops up. Now I'm going to use the canine wellness exam as the appointment type. Complaint is the exam with vaccines. And I'm going to create this appointment type for an existing client and an existing patient. And I'm going to come down, and you'll notice that as soon as I selected the client, there's some information about the client up here that's important. And for the patient, there's some important information as well. I'm going to select next. Here's the client information. Everything looks good. There's no change. And then the appointment confirmation screen. Now, since this is a walk-in appointment, I'm not going to worry about doing a confirmation message. However, if I wanted to send a confirmation message, this would send immediately on appointment save, which means that the owner would receive an immediate message on save that includes all of the appointment information. So it's a pretty handy tool when the person's not already standing in front of you. Next, reminder. So let's say this were an appointment that's out in advance. Let's say it's a couple of weeks out. Say it's going to be for a surgery. You can include right here in this, this section any additional information you want for the reminder. So I could come in here and type, please ensure that Fufu doesn't eat or drink for 12 hours prior to appointment. That's it. Now this would, if I click save, the text of this reminder would be saved, and this would be sent to the owner to remind them that the patient needs to fast prior to their next appointment. Again, it's a same day appointment. It's not needed. Just wanted to show you that functionality. No reminder and save. So now the appointment appears on screen. The next step is we're actually going to check in the appointment. And we're going to do that by clicking on the colored part of the appointment, and it brings up the appointment edit dialog. There's an option for check-in down at the bottom. I'm going to click on that. Now, when I do, you'll notice that again, I'm prompted with the alerts related to this client and patient. In this case, I can ignore them. I'm going to come down here. You'll see that the complaint is the same complaint as before. I could take the weight on check-in. So if the receptionist is responsible for taking weight, they would enter it here. In this case, the tech is going to take it when the patient goes to the back. Also, the appointment type, the canine annual exam appointment type, I have it configured in my account to automatically use the annual canine exam medical note, which is what you see here. Also, this particular appointment type does not prompt to use a bundle, so I'm not going to use a bundle here. It does prompt to create a new estimate because that's what we do at my clinic. We're going to be using an estimate to start off an appointment. Now, to check in the appointment, I'm going to click Save. Now, when I do this, a few things happen. First, the appointment status changes. You can see there's a check mark indicating that it's been checked in. When I click on the colored part of the appointment now, you'll see that a medical note for the appointment has also been created, and an estimate has been created for this appointment as well. Now, I'm going to start this appointment by clicking on the medical note. Now, when I do this, it'll take me directly into the medical note. And I guess briefly, the first column in the medical note talks about the patient. The second column of the medical note talks about the appointment. And then the third column in the medical note is all of the reminders for this patient. Now down below is the layout of the medical note. So you can see that my medical note is a custom medical note, meaning it's one that I created myself for my clinic and my clinic workflow. So you'll see there's a subjective section with some history fields, a problems field, the TPRs, an assessment section, a plan section, and a client communication section. So to fill in the medical note is quite easy. I simply click into a field and start typing. There we go. Now, something to mention. If you use a mobile device with Vetter, a phone or a tablet, you can actually use voice to text to enter information into your medical notes. What you would do, say on your iPad, bring up the medical note, tap into a field, the virtual keyboard pops up from the bottom of the screen. Immediately to the left of the spacebar, you'll see a microphone icon. Tap on the microphone, start speaking into your device. Whatever you say in your device will automatically appear in the medical note. Once you're done speaking, tap on the microphone. Simple as that. Works really well. In fact, most doctors that try to use it, they never go back to typing afterward because it just works too well. Takes a little bit of getting used to, but once you're used to it, it's a really speedy way to get data entered for soaps. So that's that. Now, let's say that this patient turns out presented for diabetes after further checks. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a diagnosis. And I'm going to do that through the assessment section, add diagnosis option. And I'm going to type in diabetes. I'm going to select the diabetes mellitus because this is what they presented for. And I'm going to select chronic, and I'm going to select save and done. Something to note, when you add diagnoses for a patient and the diagnosis remains open, they will automatically appear in subsequently created medical notes. So this is something that follows the patient throughout their life or throughout the life of the diagnosis. Next thing, since we diagnosed the patient with diabetes and we spoke to the owner about diabetes, we want to add some information to the client communication section of this medical note about this condition. And we're going to do that by clicking on the medical note tab and adding template content. Now, template content is pulled from content snippets. This is another type of template we provide in Vetter, and I'm going to add it again to the client communication section, and I'm going to include canine diabetes. Add. Now, when I scroll down to the bottom of this medical note, you'll see that it automatically included all of the information from my canine diabetes content snippet. Now, the client communication field is a special field in the medical note in that if you populate data into this field, it will automatically create a communication record for the owner, and it will automatically create a communication record for the patient. So again, the implication of using this field is that you actually spoke with the owner about what you populate into this field. Obviously, it does not be verbatim, but you kind of see what I mean. So that's that. Just to recap, working with a medical note, you can use a mobile device. Voice to text works great. Entering data into a medical manually, simply click into the medical note, start typing. Using predefined content from your content snippets, it's very easy to add simply by clicking medical note, adding template content, and choosing the section where you want to add that information. The next thing I want to mention is adding records or adding charges for the appointment. We're going to do that using a bundle, and we're going to do it using the records tab. So everything that I just spoke about, that would have been done by the tech and the doctor. Meanwhile, after the tech is done with all of the tech's work, the tech is probably going to be the one that's creating the records for the appointment while the doctor has hands on the animal doing their work. Now we're going to add the records again through the medical note through the records tab. Records, new bundles. We're going to start with a bundle, and I'm going to use my canine annual exam bundle. It's going to, oh, I apologize. I forgot what I'm doing. I'm actually starting with an estimate. I'm not adding charges directly. We're going to add charges to the estimate, and we're going to do that through this handy dandy link that comes on your medical note. We're going to do that by clicking on the command key, and we're going to click on estimate. So command key for me because I'm using an Apple computer. If you're using a Windows computer, hold down the control key and click on estimate. So hold down the key, click estimate. On the top of the screen, you'll see the estimate populates in a brand new tab. So you actually can add everything you want to the estimate here while still having your medical note open. So I'm going to add the information to the estimate through the items tab, new bundle, and I'm going to choose the annual exam canine. Patient is going to be Fufu, and the provider is going to be Sagi, and it's going to go into this medical note. Next. So here are the items in my bundle. Now, I like to create my bundles as, and I'm using air quotes, boil the ocean bundles. So for my canine annual exam, I include all of the different things that I might do even 1 in 10 times for a canine annual exam. So you can see this by the fact that I include both my rabies 1-year and my 3-year vaccines. In this case, Fufu is up to date on her vaccines, so we're going to uncheck that one, and we're going to do the 3-year vaccine. For the distemper, We're also going to uncheck the 1 year, keep the 3 year. Lepto, yes. Antech, heartworm, parasite, yes. And I'm going to uncheck the CBC. I'll keep the nail trim and I'll keep the gloves. So anything that's left checked will have a record or a charge created on the estimate. In addition, you'll notice that I have a range. So if I wanted to include a range, let's say I'm not sure I'm going to use 1 or 2 gloves. I'll say 1 to 2. Or I'll say 2 to 4. Maybe what we'll do is we'll have 2 people involved. So between 2 and 4 gloves. And both these people happen to have 2 hands, so between 2 and 4 gloves. Nail trim is only going to be 1, so that's fine. When I click create, what's going to happen is the records for this appointment so far are going to be added to the estimate. You'll see down below that the quantity has a range, and that the range in this case is $0 to $0. But it does provide the option to include that range. So if this were something else, maybe it wasn't a canine annual exam, maybe instead it was a dental. For your anesthesia, you probably would have a range on the anesthesia, as well as on the anesthesia medications, as well as on the recovery medications. But that's my estimate so far. So again, you've got your medical note working over here. You've got your estimate over here. Let's say that all of the charges are accurate. Everything's good. Customer signs off. The first step for the estimate is to approve the estimate. That's on the top of the screen. I'm going to click approve. Now, when I click approve, I'm prompted to either get a signature from the owner. So if you're using a mobile device like a tablet, you can hand it to the owner and they could draw their signature. Just like that. Or they could type it. Now, you don't have to do either of these. You could just, approve it and be done. So if verbal is okay with you, that's fine. I had it typed, so I'm going to click approve. Now you'll see that the estimate now has my signature on it, well, virtual signature. And the last step is to convert this estimate to an invoice. So once it's approved, it gets converted to an invoice. And I'm going to do that here. And you'll see that I've got a range because I chose between 2 and 4 gloves. So I'm going to say in this case, only 1 person needed gloves for the appointment. So we're going to apply the low range. And that means only 2 gloves. Next, this is going to be creating records under the medical note, the FUFU medical note. And we're going to be creating medical records, so that's selected. And we're going to create a new invoice, and the provider is going to be Sagi. Now, once we're confident that everything is accurate, I'm going to select convert. Now, when I do this, the estimate converts to an invoice. So all of those stubbed out charges that we'd created on the estimate, all of those are now being created as records on an invoice. And you'll see that in just a moment, once this is done running. And there we go. So here's our new invoice. And you'll notice on the top of the screen that on the created date, it actually has a link to estimate 159. So we will maintain the original estimate so you can go back to it in case there are any questions later. And we link it right in the invoice. So again, I'm going to use my handy dandy control key trick on a Windows computer, command key on an Apple. I'm going to click on it. I'm going to show you that the estimate still exists with a signature on it, proving that the owner approved everything that was here. So I'm going to click close, takes me back to the invoice. Invoice looks good. I'm going to close, and I'm going to go back to the medical note. So medical note is done. The records are located, well, I got to refresh because the records were added, but I haven't, there we go. Here's all the records right within the medical note. Now, the last thing are documents. So documents are pretty handy. And at this point, I should probably mention, we recommend that when you work with medical notes in Better, that you use your medical note as the container for all of the work in an appointment. What I mean by that, your medical note is going to include all the SOAP notes, everything that the doctor and the tech see when they do their work. You're also going to include all the charges for the appointment, and you've got them here under the Records tab. Lastly, all of the documents for the appointment are also important to keep as part of the unit of work for this appointment. So documents could be images, they could be movies, they could be letters. So basically ways that you can get information out to the owner quickly. The reason why we recommend keeping everything as part of the medical note and creating a unit of work is because you have an easy way to review what you did in the past by simply using these handy dandy arrows on the top right corner of your medical note. So as an example, if I go back to the prior appointment, because I see a lot of patients, I forget what I've done in the past. I can click backwards really quick and do a quick review of everything that happened in the prior appointment. And you can see all of the notes, you can see all of the records, you can see all of the documents that were created for that appointment. You can do a quick review. Once you're done, you simply click on the front arrow and it takes you to the current appointment. So again, creating all of your documentation, all of your charges, all of your letters, all of your attachments, putting them into the medical note is a really good way to ensure that you have basically your medical note is your bucket that includes everything that happened that day. Really easy to go back later and see what you did. Cool, so that's that. Last step, documents. Now, if I wanted to add an attachment to this medical note, I could do so by clicking on New Attachment. This dialog includes the ability to just drag and drop something from my computer in here, or if I'm using a mobile device, say an iPad, and I bring up this dialog, the very first thing I'm going to see is the option to take a photo or video. If I tap on Take a Photo, the camera pops up on my iPad and I can take a picture and add it directly into my medical note. Same thing with a video. In this case, I'm not going to create a new attachment, but I wanted to mention that that's possible. Also, you have the ability to add a letter. Now, in this case, I am going to create a letter, and I'm going to create a letter from a template that I created, and this is going to be the discharge letter. And I specifically created this letter as a way to get information out to the owner quickly as part of an exam. So I'm going to specify the recipient, and I'm going to specify the owner. We break these fields out in the template. So we have owner fields and we have recipient fields. Now, I don't remember what I set up in that template, so I always select both just to be safe. And I'm going to select Save. And when I do this, the new letter is created. You can see the text here. You can see all of the information about the services that were provided, a listing of the reminders, and the doctor's signature. And again, the letter is context specific, so you can see that it includes the owner's name, it includes the patient's name. Everything is exactly the way it should be, well, with one exception. The owner has chosen not to microchip Fufu, and rather than send this letter out incomplete with incomplete information, I'm going to select Edit, and I'm going to remove the microchip field or the microchip row from the summary section. So I simply click in there and I go to Delete Row. Done, save, everything looks good. Now I'm also going to preview this just to make sure that it looks okay. I'm going to preview it by clicking on Export and Print Letter. Now if you watch the top of the screen, you'll see that this letter is going to populate in a brand new tab and shows all the information. Looks like it's formatted pretty nicely. I like it. So I'm going to close this out and I'm going to go back to the SOAP, and I'm going to do that by clicking on the SOAP link here. Just a last quick review. Our medical note is entered, the records have been added, and the documents have all been updated appropriately. Again, the SOAP is the container for the appointment. So we've included everything. We're ready to check out. Now, to check out the appointment, we're going to go to the schedule. And when we go to the schedule, we're simply going to go to the appointment for this patient, Fufu, and we're going to click on the appointment. And this brings up the appointment dialog. Now at this point, the client and the patient are standing in front of the receptionist. And the receptionist's job in my clinic is to try to upsell the owner before they leave, making sure that they don't need any food, they don't need any toys, they don't need any heartworm medication or flea prevention, that sort of stuff. So in this case, the receptionist is actually going to pop up this invoice in a brand new tab and review it with the owner. We're going to do that by holding down our handy dandy key on our keyboard. Again, Control key on a Windows computer, Command key on an Apple. Pop it open in a brand new tab. And when I do this, the receptionist can now review the charges with the owner one last time and upsell. And we're going to upsell food. So in this case, receptionist looks at Jeff and says, hey, Fufu looks like she's pretty hungry, so why don't we give him some food? Great. We're going to do that by clicking on Items, New Item, and we're going to add food. So we're going to add canine food bag, In this case, they're going to buy 2 bags of food, and looks good. Everything's great. I'm going to add it to the medical note for today. So I'm just, again, creating that single bucket for everything that happened. And create records, yes, next, save and done. So now canine food bag has been added to the invoice right at the very bottom, and you can see the total charge is $312.53. So with that, we're actually going to close this invoice out, and it takes us straight back to the dialog where we're going to do our checkout. We are checking out through the schedule. Now, I could have just as easily have taken payment through the invoice, but I'm going to show you why I chose not to do that, because the checkout dialog in Vetter is so much more powerful. Here's why. So you can see in the checkout dialog, you have the option to, you basically see all of the invoices that are open and ready for payment. In this case, we also have some credits to offset the balance. Now, I happen to know that these 2 credits are credits that the owner put with our clinic for future work, for a couple of surgeries for other patients. So we're going to uncheck these. We're not going to apply them to this invoice. Instead, we are going to apply that $18.15 that's outstanding, and the remaining collected amount is $294.38. So now it's our choice. How are we going to take this payment? And the owner says, okay, we're going to take cash. Okay, cash. So he's going to pay us $300 in cash. And you'll see that the option is to give $5.62 cash back. Now, let's say we've done a lot of cash transactions today, and we don't have change to give back, unfortunately. We can ask the owner, hey, are you okay getting a credit on your account? Well, unfortunately, I don't have change. It's like, yeah, no problem. We'll be back soon. So we'll just leave the credit on the account. Perfect. All right, next thing, documents. Now, this is really the most important benefit of using the checkout dialog. You can include all of the documents that you want to provide to the owner during checkout, but you can provide them all in one place. So I'm going to choose the discharge letter. I could also include other things as well. These are enough. So 4 documents. And I'm also prompted to enter a rabies tag. Now, in my clinic, the receptionist is responsible for pulling the rabies tag off of the spool and entering it. We're going to do that here. And export. Now, export is handy. You can either choose to send these attachments over to the client via their email account, or you can print it. In this case, I'm going to print just to show you the way it works. So I'm going to select checkout. When I do that, a few things happen. First, oops, I clicked too hard. First, the appointment status changes, so it changes to checked out. Second, all of the documents are printed. Third, the invoice is paid. So you can see here, the rabies certificate is here. Vaccination certificate is here. The invoice with the paid stamp is here. And the discharge letter that we created earlier is here. And to print this, I simply go to the top right corner of the screen, and you'll see that there's a printer icon. I click on that printer icon, and it defaults to my paper printer. So I can choose to print it here by clicking print. I don't need to print it. I'm going to click cancel. This is only for demonstration purposes. So I'm going to close this tab. Takes me directly back to the schedule. The client is paid. Client is happy. Patient is happy. Receptionist is happy. All is good in the world. And this appointment is complete. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Hope you have a great day.